Hi everyone, I just want to take the time to go through the task that I set for the next session, which was this whole writing an introduction to a protagonist or an antagonist using the same techniques that A.F. Harold used for the imaginary. And the reason I want to make this video is because I felt I really rushed the ending for the two sessions that I took, and it didn't I'd rather you really get the task rather than me feeling like, oh, it's rushed and you don't really know what you're doing and it becomes a little bit less enjoyable. So I thought if I make a really quick video talking through what to do and maybe talk through some of the other things, then that would make a bit of sense, really. If anyone could email me or message me in Goodreads about this video afterwards, once I've watched it, to tell me if it made sense or not, that would be great, because then I can do something about it. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll do something about it. Okay, so number one, the first thing you're going to do is decide whether you want to introduce a protagonist, the good guy, or the antagonist, the bad guy, or good gal, or bad gal. And that's the thing. You might want to use a male character, that's the protagonist, or you might want to introduce a female, and likewise here, you might want to introduce a female or a male antagonist. But the key here really is to build on what we were doing before, where we were looking at the text and thinking, how do we feel about Amanda, and how do we feel about Mr. Bunting, and why do we feel that way? What is it that A.F. Harold has done in his writing to make us feel that way? So for Amanda, if you remember, I personally came to the conclusion that she might have Asperger's, just because of some of the problem solving that she did, the fact that she's quite chatty with other people without any worry about stranger danger. She had strange boundaries, and she was always caught up in a moment. And how, AF didn't write she's got Asperger's, he just left clues in the text for me to work that out. My idea is that as a teacher, getting the children to spend their time exploring with your guidance, good character introductions or good writing, they will take this away with them and use it in their own, and that's how you get good writers, and that's how you get good readers too, actually. So you're going to choose whether to look at a protagonist and an antagonist. Now you're going to use the same narrative devices that AF used. So let's model looking at Amanda, and let's pretend that you want to introduce an antagonist, okay? A protagonist, sorry. So we pull out this grid that we've got, which is there, and then we look at Amanda's here. So this is where we go for Amanda's, okay? And what did we know about Amanda? Well, she likes to play outside, she's adventurous, she lives in a moment, she's talkative, and she has Asperger's. Now what you would do is you would think about a character that you want to introduce who's a protagonist, someone we're going to root for in the story. But she might have some things about her that are interesting that you don't want to tell us about, but you want to pique our interest, or you want to infer. So that means that if we're really good readers, we can work it out. So it could be, she's lonely. It could be she's a child of a single parent. It could be she has an overactive imagination. It could be that she's Asperger's. It could be that she's got ADHD. There could be lots of things that you can think of that are going to just make us have to work out a little bit more about what she's like. It could be something simple as she's shy, or she's quiet. So what we do then is we think, well, how can I show she's shy? Which would be a hard thing to do, wouldn't it? So she could not be on her own, I guess, and she could be out with one of her parents, and someone could ask her something, but she doesn't answer, and she hides behind her parent. I guess that would let us know that she's shy. You're not telling us, you're not writing she was shy. She does an action that shows she's shy. Whew. Lots of sh there, okay? If she was adventurous, it could be that she's in the back garden and imagining a game that she's playing with a friend or on her own, and she's calling on stories that she knows that celebrate adventure, Treasure Island or any other book, The Hobbit, where she's fighting with a sword, or she's exploring through the undergrowth. Whatever she's doing that seems adventurous, we're going to think as a reader, oh, she's adventurous, rather than again doing the Blyton approach, which would be she's adventurous. So these are the notes that you would take. What's she going to be like? What things can I get her doing, or even saying, that are going to show these things? And once you've got those ingredients, that's when you begin to do your writing. And you're very welcome. I mean, this is what I would do. You don't have to do this, but you're very welcome to go back to that extract. And let's just see. I should be able to rotate it. Okay. And have a look at the structure of the writing, which is, that evening, Amanda Shuffleup opened the wardrobe door and hung coat up on a boy. Let's keep going. This bit's interesting. Look, if the laces never came undone, she thought she'd never get her shoes off. So this "she thought" gives us license to kind of get into her head from the third person perspective. And then looking in your character's head gives us a little hint about what they're thinking without giving too much away. Not only that, but wearing the same shoes forever. Amanda was the sort of girl, as she'd happily tell you, who liked wearing dirty old trainers because they're comfy and it doesn't matter if they get dirty because they're already dirty. This is that kind of going on there with the, that long sentence means that's the quick thinking, constant stream of, or thinking, a constant stream of thinking where it's kind of not disjointed, but there's a flow, so she doesn't slow down. It's really interesting. So you could be looking and should be looking at this going, oh, well, I like that sentence there, so all I'm going to do is tweak that sentence and make it fit my own, or I like how he's moved from this paragraph into this paragraph. And remember, I'm only expecting 6 sentences. If you want to write more, that's brilliant. But if you don't, it's fine. Just as long as there's enough for you to share with another person, read it out, and for them to say, can I guess what your character is like? From reading it, I think they might be like this. And then you can feedback and go, well, no, I was going for this, and this is how I did that. Or, yes, that's what I was looking for. But what we're then doing is building up a dialogue between the reader and the author through you doing that too, which is another thing we're trying to model. So you can always read this passage or these passages to kind of find out how AF did it, and then use my structure to think about the planning part. And then for the next session, bring your protagonist character if that's what you want to focus on. If not, then you'll need to bring the Mr. Bunting one. And I just looked there and I actually couldn't see it. So what I'll do is, because I've got it, the Mr. Bunting notes in here, I'll upload them. I know why I haven't put them there, and I'll do it now. And it's because I didn't want you reading the answer sheet before the session, basically. So here's Mr. Bunting's one. You can see it's the same, what do we know so far? Mr. Bunting arrived at Amanda's house at an awkward time. That was already a reason we didn't like him. He's got a deep voice, but and we can't see his eyes or his mouth. And they're the bits, someone mentioned that in each of the sessions I did, which was really astute. They're the things we look for when we're trying to connect to a person. So if you're having an antagonist, you want to create that disconnect. So maybe you hide their eyes some way. Maybe it's sunglasses, maybe it's a cap, maybe it's a hoodie, maybe it's something completely different. It's up to you. He was interested in finding out about children. He was socially inept. His size meant he was a little bit disturbing. So think about what sizes we see in people that we don't like. It sounds a bit awkward, doesn't it? But these are things that culturally we kind of take into account when we're trying to measure people, measure as in work out rather than literally get out and take measure. You understand? So again, it's the same technique. What is it that makes us feel awkward about Mr. Bunting? How does the author tell us these things? And then there's just some extra information here that kind of builds on this. But these are the only bits you need to know when you're building your own antagonist. Okay. You might say what he or she's going to look like. Where are they? What they're doing? I talked about that bad guys are usually met in liminal spaces, meaning that space that's less just on the border of there being a bit of danger, or potential danger. So Mr. Bunting arrives at the door. So inside the house, it's safe, but once you get out of that house, there's a risk. So it's a really clever place to meet someone. I don't know if you've ever done the whole door-to-door people, but you do feel a little bit on edge when someone comes and knocks on your door and you don't know them. And I was saying that another space might be in the afterwards, his second book, the space is outside school. So someone picks up the protagonist from the school, and the school is safe and the school grounds are safe, but second she leaves that school ground, you do feel that she's in a bit of trouble immediately. So he uses that same technique. And again, just like with Amanda, I'd advise you to come here and look at how it's done by AF. So you can see that actually it starts with the protagonists doing something, and then an event knocks their event out of kilter. And you don't have to have Rudger, and Amanda. You can have anyone you want. As I say, it's not based on the imaginary, it's just an encounter. And once again, it can be 6 or 7 sentences. But what works here is it's obviously not from the antagonist's point of view. It's not from Mr. Bunting's point of view. It's from someone else, an adult. Well, it's from the third person in this one, but really we're looking over the shoulders of Mum in this one, which is interesting. So they're really the things that I want you to focus on, and they're the things that I'd like you to do to help you write your 6 or 7 pages. 6 or 7 sentences, with the idea that when you come for the next session, you've got something to read to a random other person, and they will say things like, is your character like this, whether it's the protagonist or antagonist, this is how I worked it out, and then you do the same with their work, and then we have a discussion about what it was like to write in that way, what it was like to read someone else's writing in that way, and how that discussion might be different to other writing discussions that we've seen in the primary classroom. So that's the idea. And I might as well just go through these 2 things and then go back to those books because they're important. So the other thing again is I'm going to need to see your notes on chapter 4 this time. And again, in groups, I'll set you a task to do with that. And someone rightly said, what's the Doonin? Begin reading the Doonin is what I've said. So it's looking at pictures in pitch books, but I think it's a really good time for me to come back to the reading list anyway to show you what I mean by that. Can I just take... I'd have been so sad if I wasn't recording. Okay, so seminar reading course test. There it is. So looking at pictures in picture books by Jane Doonin. I actually sell copies of this for less than this, I think. Okay, so if you want to buy a copy, I think I've got some in FGO2, which is the room between FGO 1 and 3. And if not, I'll speak to Debbie about getting some in as soon as possible. And it basically, Aidan Chambers and his wife publishes these books. It's Thimble Press. So I can always email Aidan and then just say how much is it for a stack. Because I think these books are really good books for you to keep, just so you remember the whole thing I'm about to teach you on reading picture books properly, which I really like teaching. So let's go back to the slides. We talked about begin reading that. I won't assess you on this one, but your ability to decode pictures in picture books, which is potentially your assignment, and definitely the planning sessions, is vital. And then bring your notes again. Thank you to everyone whose notes I saw. It made a big difference. Some of you are amazing and wrote copious notes, and it just meant the world. So thank you again. Bring your little short narrative that you're writing. You're introducing your own good guy or bad guy. And then a Goodreads task just says, just choose one of your, it says next week here, but it's not. It's a few weeks away, sadly. Just basically, it's, have open on your phone or on your laptop your Goodreads account, and be prepared to talk to a stranger, potentially, about how it's going, what's going well, what's not going well. And again, follow someone different. Go back to the Goodreads account page, which I think is probably here. Here you go. Keep following all these people. I see someone come in here every so often up here. But, come and look at their list of betterments, make a comment on their list of betterment would be quite a nice thing to do. Start building up those reading groups. The successes that I keep hearing are people that say we read together in our flat, or we meet up and we read in the library. Anything you can do to just knock out a few of those books. And then I did say I'd talk about this thing. So these books by Pi Corbett are available in the library. Okay, and I left out an A3 sheet, but I realized that not all of you might have got that, so I can always bring them to the next session. You are not set on them, you're not tested on them, but they've both got at Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 some really nice ideas about how to teach the writing of character in the classroom. And there is some of a focus on that in the assignment. Actually, there is a focus on it in the assignment, but actually I've given it you because I just think it's a really good teacher tool. So let's say How to Teach Fiction Writing at Key Stage 2 by Pye Corbett. Let's be really naughty and come here, right? I say naughty because we shouldn't be buying them from everything around them, but we're all students. So How to Teach Fiction Writing. There we go, look. So that's like £11, a bit expensive for you guys to buy really, but they are really, really good. God, if ever you're teaching narrative writing in Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2, they're super for that grounding of knowing what to do. And whenever I taught any narrative in any year group, I always read these first, just get some ideas. There's some other ones that are really good that we talk about in the storytelling module, but those two are super. I do believe they're in the library, but I will photocopy the missing pages if you want. And it was meant to be, we were going to do a workshop looking at them, but my timing was out, and next year I would probably remove these pages, but for now they're really good for you to know. Okay, or at least remove the task. So hopefully that will help you know what to do, and I feel a bit better knowing that I've kind of given you a lowdown. And as I said, if someone can like email me and say, yeah, that makes sense, or can you explain this a bit more, then I'll try and write an email with that. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.